It is 8:42. Let's talk with the head honcho over at publicaddress.net and also the Media 7 show on TVNZ7. Of course, that hard news blog there as well. It is, of course, Russell Brown back with us this morning. Morning, Russell.
Good morning.
Let's talk the end of the world.
Yes, well, if it's not the end of the world, then it's quite an interesting year, 2011. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Now you wrote a blog post yesterday, just sort of saying, well, hang on, let's recap the year that has been, even though we're only just over halfway, really.
Yeah.
All the extraordinary events, and also what you thought was going to happen in 2011 at the end of last year. You know, you had some predictions about what might go down, but nothing like what actually has.
Yeah. No, the last Media 7 of last year in December, we actually did a show looking ahead at what seemed likely to be a lively news year.
Yeah.
And we had the WOOOOORLLD 17 trial, which now won't happen until next year by the look of it. Pike River investigation, which hasn't been quite as high profile as you might have thought. Serious fraud office actions against various finance companies. Actually, that hasn't been a story either.
No.
But of course, you know, beginning on February 22nd with the earthquake there, well, that wasn't the beginning of it, because the Arab Spring had kicked into gear in January.
That's right. Yeah.
And you've had this extraordinary year of historic and not always in a good way events. It's the Rupert Murdoch's media empire unravelling. And now a 5.9 earthquake on the east coast of America, where they never get earthquakes.
Well, apparently, I mean, they do very occasionally, and this has been the strongest in that part of the world for over 100 years.
Yeah.
Just getting back to the Arab Spring, though, right? I mean, that wasn't something that in the Media 7 show that you had predicted, but perhaps if our media here in New Zealand was a little bit more across some of these world events, we might have heard about some of the stuff a little bit earlier.
Yeah, but I can't recall international media saying, late last year that something was about to happen.
So was everyone asleep?
Yeah, I think so. Or maybe it genuinely was, the unexpected. I mean, it started from quite small events in Tunisia. It was one man's protest, and perhaps, I mean, you always have this argument over whether it can, the role of social media, and can it really be called the Twitter revolution. But I think the networking power of Twitter and Facebook certainly had a role to play, just in the sheer speed with which things unfolded.
Yeah. Of course, in the mix with all this, of course, is the world financial markets.
Yeah, which is terrifying. In that blog post, I linked to something that Bernard Hickey turned up, an assessment of the state of the global economy by a guy called Terry McFadgen, who was an advisor to the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. It is the most depressing thing you've ever read. It was a very depressing thing to read on a Monday morning. We're no way out of the woods economically. The Eurozone may split. The US probably never got out of recession. And there are, according to McFadgen, no real good answers. We're just going to have to endure this for some years.
And one thing feeds the other, right? So with the unrest and strife around, particularly in Europe or in Greece, Spain, Portugal, and now you could almost say that some of the rioting in England has been fed by the economic situation as well.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting because on Media 7 last week, Bronwyn Hayward from Canterbury University, who was actually in the UK up until I think earlier this year, said she was quite puzzled by the various British newspaper commentators who expressed shock and surprise at the riots. And she said those same people last December predicted that it would be the summer of rioting thanks to spending cuts.
Right.
So it wasn't that unexpected. I think maybe what really surprised them was that their predictions came true.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting year, and there's more of it to go, including, of course, the Rugby World Cup and a general election.
Yeah. So it's big second half of the year for us here in New Zealand.
Huge. And, actually that post, I kicked it off with a killer fact that occurred to me a little while ago. The last time the Rugby World Cup was held in New Zealand, it was squeezed between a significant earthquake and a general election.
Now, that was the Napier Earthquake?
The Edgecombe earthquake.
Edgecombe.
Which was actually quite a big quake. And it seems hard to believe now, but communications were out with most of Edgecombe for days. And I think something like half, it's only a fairly small town, but half the buildings were badly damaged there. So, and then, of course, there was the general election later on in the year where the incumbent got back in, which is looking like what might happen here.
Yeah, looking like the same thing. Actually, while now we've strayed into politics, and I brought it up a little bit earlier with Russel Norman, Claire Curran's online kind of spaz about where the left vote is going and accusing the Greens of cannibalising Labour Party policy and taking away votes.
That was daft.
Bit weird, eh?
Yeah, I don't. But so I think some people have gone completely over the top in their criticism of Curran. It was a ridiculous thing to say. You don't own policy areas as a political party. But I can kind of see where there might be some frustration, because what she's seeing is the commentary out there on the internet. Slagging off Labour, quite often deservedly, and yet she hasn't got people to come and volunteer in her electorate, which has always been particularly important to Labour, that they've had people on the ground.
Right.
And it's something they've always done well. If you look at the Mount Albert by-election, they had 400 volunteers on the day. So you can kind of understand that she'd be frustrated by that, but it was just a stupid thing to say. It's a quality control issue.
Yeah.
If you can't say something sensible in a blog endorsed by your party, don't write the blog. And
in some sense, though, with the cannibalisation of the vote, aren't they reaping almost what they sowed by not having the Green Party closer in previous agreements, and in fact not even having them in coalition over that 9 years that Labour was in power? Yeah,
there were various reasons for that, and you had Winston Peters in there who had more seats, saying I cannot work in a government that includes the Greens. So it wasn't out of sheer spite, but I think there have been many times along the way where they could have held the Greens a bit closer. But it is. I've been sort of following it and debating it a bit online, and I suspect it's not the kind of thing that really is going to have much impact on the general public.
No,
but
it should say online then.
Yep.
Hey, finally, and because I know you're very enthused about the topic, the All Black selection. Your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much what I expected, actually. I think Jose Aguirre from Wellington is the unlucky player by general agreement. He didn't do anything wrong. He played really well, but I am glad that Graham Henry kept in Isaiah Toiava, who just seems to get a bad press. He plays, in general, really, really well. Before he got injured in the Super 15, he was the best back in the competition. So I'm glad he's there, and I'm also glad to see Sonny Bill Williams there. I think, again, people get a mindset that these players have some favoured status and they're not very good. Williams was second in the tackle count in the game against South Africa on Sunday, and he laid on the pass for the All Blacks' only try. So you can't really say he didn't do enough.
Yeah. Well,
but, 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to it.
I hope it's all worth it, because the hangover's going to last a while, Russell.
Indeed. But actually, before we go, I have to say, have a look at the entertainment lineup down at Queen's Wharf over the 2 months. It's actually really pretty good, especially the late night ones. People like Nick D, The Turnaround, Pitch Black, In the Cloud. Yeah, I think those are going to be pretty neat events.
Should be quite amazing.
Free.
Yeah, let's hope they've got a good lighting rig going on with all that white polythene.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Russell. Cheers. See ya. Russell Brown at publicaddress.net and Media 7 Show, TVNZ.